Hello, and welcome to the Shortline Safety Institute's webinar Assessor Series, and we're going to talk about trust. Today, I am joined by Sam Cotton and J.R. Sampson, who will guide us through today's webinar. But before we get started, I wanted to just show a few features of our webinar platform. So you joined us today through the GoToWebinar, and on your right-hand side, you should have a toolbar. At the end of our webinar, we're going to have a little opportunity where we can ask some questions that could be answered live. Now, if you see on your toolbar, you should have the last option that says chat or questions. The last
Are you back on, Michelle?
Sam, I can hear you.
Yeah, Michelle just kind of cut out there.
Yep.
Can everybody hear me?
Now I can.
All right, sorry about that. We're having a little bit of a malfunction back here. So, Sam, if you want to take over, you can feel free to start our webinar off.
So the topics we're going to cover today is going to be just a little bit of overview about trust, about why it's important to your railroad and how you can develop trust and things that can be done to help enhance that on your property. We're also going to do a brief element review of how we tie this back into the 10 core elements that we use in safety culture assessments. That's going to include some of the accountability on how do you ensure that these programs, these processes that we're going to talk about are effective and utilized to their maximum effectiveness. And communication. Communication is always, especially when you're talking about trust, communication is key. And, as we move on to some of the other slides here, especially when we get into the 10 core elements, you're going to see a lot about communication, empowerment, ties together. So communication is critical to trust, and the empowerment piece, we're actually going to go into a little bit of detail on empowerment. Through the industry, we've noted that there's a little bit of a misconception about empowerment. So we want to spend a little time today talking about that. Then at the end, there'll be an opportunity for the audience to ask questions, any Q&A that we have. So with that, we'll go to the next slide, which is the overall systematic review. Over the past 3 years, gathered general information about the aggregate trends from our assessment process. And if you'll notice that there again, trust is involved in most of the elements that we talk about. And in our process, just to kind of reiterate again, we've talked about this before, but no names or railroads are ever recorded. Confidentiality in our process is critical. That's the key to making this work. And we'll review some helpful and in-depth resources that you can use at your railroad to help with these opportunities and enhance your railroad's communication practices and some of your trust building practices. the 10 core elements of a strong safety culture. So we've outlined the 10 here, and you'll notice we have 2 of them highlighted. Decisions demonstrate that safety is prioritized over competing demands, and mutual trust is fostered between employees and the railroad. So these are the 2 elements that tie in the closest with what we're talking about today. But like I said earlier, if you look through these 10 core elements, there's an element of trust in every one of these. So most of the elements have that element trust built into it, or they have a component of building trust or require a certain level of trust to be strong elements in your safety culture. So, some of these things will help you build trust, but some of these elements also require a certain level of trust be established in order for it to be effective. The open and effective communication element 7 also closely ties into this because, the more you communicate about things, the more trust you can build. So with that, we'll kind of move into some of the next slides about how we move how we move the needle on your railroad a little bit with building trust. And with that, JR, I'll let you jump in here on this one.
All right. I appreciate those who are attending this morning. We can recall back over the depth of our careers, all of the experiences that we've had regarding decisions that were made on the railroad. I can recall back when I first went to work on a Class 1 railroad. I often had to wonder just what were these people thinking when they made the decision to do this? Well, if as an employee, your people are not able to see that the decisions that you make, as well as the decisions that they make, are made specifically to demonstrate and to emphasize their own safety and the safety of the railroad, then our decisions really mean very little. Whenever we look at the decisions that are made on the railroad, it's the most unique element of any organization. If they have a strong safety culture, their decision-making processes will clearly show what is the highest level of importance. No matter what rule book you follow, very early on in your rule set, you will see a statement, something to the effect that safety is the most important element of duty. And it truly is. Whenever we make decisions as to whether or not to move a car, we have to make that decision based on, is it safe to move? And is it safe for me to make that move? Whenever we talk about moving a train, there might have been a defect in the train. In order to make a decision to move it, we have to first determine that that is the safest thing for us to do. Sometimes those safety decisions will be in keeping with speed. Sometimes they won't. But we can't let any other criteria override our choice in making decisions. If we want to ruin the trust of the people that are looking to us for leadership, just make a bad decision and see what happens to the trust. They have to be able to understand and know that what we are concerned about is their safety as well as the success of the railroad. But safety always has to take that priority. And in dealing with the trust, mutual trust, we've got to be able to look at employees. Employees have to be able to look at the company and understand that our first option here is always going to be to make a choice for safety. Railroads with a strong safety culture will consistently choose safety over performance anytime that they're faced with a choice. If there is a choice of cutting corners to increase performance, to increase speed, to increase delivery time, but at the cost of safety, that choice cannot be made in that way without seriously demonstrating that we're not trustworthy, and we can't afford to do that. I don't know if any of you can recall, there used to be a film that really made the rounds in the short line industry regarding safety, and one of the slides in that film that was entitled something about next 30 seconds of your life. There was a example given where a man, obviously in management, was talking to a couple of people in a switch yard operation, and he was talking to them about what they needed to get done. And his last statement was, okay, let's hurry up and knock this out, get out of here. And the very next slide showed an individual taking a shortcut and being crushed between two cars. We always need to keep that in the back of our minds. It's been in the back of my mind for the last 35 years. And it's constantly a reminder to me that our decision not only demonstrate that safety is prioritized, not only keep safety at the forefront, but it also means that we are trustworthy if our decisions demonstrate that safety is prioritized over competing demands. Went one too far. There we go. Whenever mutual trust is fostered between the employees and the railroad, we find that it is the biggest cornerstone, and not only in the railroad environment, but any organization that you might be involved in. If there is a matter of culture, trust has got to be right at the top of the level in all of them. Among railroad employees, whether you are working on the line or whether you are the senior leader in the railroad, that matter of mutual trust, being able to believe that your people are doing the best things for not only themselves, but for you individually and for the railroad as a whole. That mutual trust will always be fostered. Employees who have developed this relationship with their supervisors or supervisors with their employees will find that there always then a greater and a heightened willingness for people to bring up safety concerns and to consider very novel things that can be done in order to ensure the safety of the railroad, to significantly increase the safety of the way that we respond to anything that comes up. Mutual trust will never take a second seat or second level behind anything of importance when it comes to safety on the railroad. Keep going one too many. My fingers touch. There we go. Sam, can you give us some examples here of things that can be done to show that we are building trust?
Yeah, so absolutely. Some of the examples that we have, you notice we titled this Examples of Building Trust Through Inclusion. And somewhat specific to what we're talking about in this slide is building a company safety vision or other company policies. The key to that, and we see this a lot in the assessment process, the more you can include your employees in the development of these things, the more you're going to build buy-in from them, and you're going to create trust, because it's not just management dictating to the workforce what needs to be done, but actually asking for and valuing their input is critical. The more you can include employees in the development of these type things, the more buy-in you get from them, and the more it builds the trust that they trust that you truly value their input and that you're looking for ways to improve things. So these can demonstrate safety as always a priority for the entire company, not just transportation employees. It's critical that you go across crafts on a railroad. We see a lot of times that things are somewhat compartmentalized based on craft. And the more you can get your maintenance away and your signal and your transportation employees working together collaboratively on some of these, the better it works, the better input you're going to get. And it's not just that safety statement or safety vision that we're talking about. this could be any other type of statement or policy that you wanted to enact. Let's say you wanted to revise your discipline policy. That's a good place to involve the employees. They're going to give you a lot of insight. At the end of the day, management still has they're still tasked with the requirement of making it suitable, but getting employees involved really helps to build that trust, and it definitely helps to build buy-in to what you're creating. Ensure that the change can be incorporated and reviewed when possible. It's not just a question of creating it, but you have to use it. You can't just let it sit on a shelf and collect dust. It has to be something that's a living, updatable policy that's regularly updated and communicated. The communication is also critical. It must be widely and clearly communicated throughout the organization. And the critical part to that is, there again, involving the employees in its development. The rest of the employees have a greater interest in what's going on. It's a little easier to communicate, a little easier to get everybody's buy-in and understanding on it. Must be accurate and upheld consistently. And the employees are accountable for their decisions that best reflect safety. So what we're looking at here is, whenever they're building this process, when you have your employees involved in building these policies, whatever that group of employees is, whether it be a committee or just one or two people that you've tasked with this progress, building this program, it's about holding them accountable for the decisions, about making sure that it goes the direction the company needs it to go. They have to have the guidance, they have to have the outline to follow, if you will, but it's critical to have them involved as much as possible. There's a couple of things that comes out of this, and here we're talking more specifically about creating policies or visions, but including your employees in any activities where possible is a huge benefit. It could be many different activities. It could be even incorporating some of this stuff at company functions, whether it be a cookout that you hold for your employees, or have them involved in creating what the agenda is going to look like for those types of meetings or outings. Have them involved in the planning and development of it, and where possible, it's been shown that the more you can involve families in those types of activities, the better as well. Not too long ago, I had a railroad that I went to work for. We talk about building trust. It's also critical to build the relationships. Having those relationships with your employees definitely helps to build the trust. And this particular railroad, I was new there. I was the general manager, and the railroad depot itself was just a metal building sitting in the middle of a gravel parking lot. There was nothing there to look at. During one of our staff meetings, I had mentioned that maybe we wanted to do something to kind of spruce the place up a little bit, build the place that people would take pride in saying that they worked there. One of the things we talked about was putting some planting beds in the front of the depot and putting up some flagpoles. And, I met with a lot of resistance from the staff. They really weren't crazy about doing it. The next, and I almost think they didn't believe that I was serious about doing it. So the next staff meeting, I brought it up again, and still nobody took any action on it. So one day I went out and got on the backhoe and started digging in front of the depot, and the roadmaster come out and stopped me before I, in his words, leveled the depot. But once they realized I was serious, at that point, I had the roadmaster, the superintendent, the train master, the chief clerk, everybody coming out of the office and getting involved in this. The next thing you know, they're like, well, can I go buy this, and can I put this into it? And the relationships that were built through that one simple act, the fact that they understood that I was serious about doing it, I wanted them to do it, and got them involved in it. It helped to really solidify the relationships and the management team there. And then we took it even further out with some of the other things, the other cleanup efforts that we had on the property, where we're able to involve the employees, and it's really important to get them involved. So the more you can involve employees in any aspect of, whether it be building programs or policies, or even in just daily activities, building those relationships and building that trust between management and employees is very important. And with that, JR, you want to talk a little bit about the opportunities for personal development?
Yeah, I do, but I also want to talk just a little bit more about including families and employees in other things. A lot of times, and especially this time of year, railroads engage in some community outreach efforts. When I say this time of year, a lot of railroads, short lines, run Santa Claus trains, or they do that kind of thing, show a positive image to the community and to do something for the community and to involve the community. Those are great occasions to include not only employees, but also their families in order to be a service to the community around them, to children around them. And these things always take a huge step in building trust. Now, before you do that, you probably need to talk to your legal advisors and make sure that it's okay to have family members involved in those kinds of activities, but there's always going to be some way that you can include these people. And most folks are very happy involved in community outreach, especially for the railroad. It goes a long ways in building that mutual trust that is always needs to be there for the railroad. When we talk about personal development on the parts of your employees, a lot of times in short lines, we really encourage railroads to look inward, to be able to promote from within, rather than going outside of the railroad in order to find new talent to help in management areas. Develop your own, because those are the individuals that have a great deal of investment in your railroad, and they will be the most effective if you bring them along in a development program that enables them to build and to maintain their trust to the company and to encourage trust between them and the people that they'll now be managing, even though last week or last month or maybe yesterday they were coworkers with those people. So there is a huge benefit in being able to have a good leadership development program where individuals can promote their own personal development with the encouragement of the company, but in an effort that they have to really take charge of and say, I want to do this. I want to develop my own opportunities in the future. Most people have a level of pride that encourages them, want to reach for something better. They want to reach for more responsibility. They want to reach for more accountability. And as long as that trust has been developed, employees, managers, even senior managers, they will all respond in a positive way to increase their personal development. Whenever we talk about mentoring and coaching one another, often we kind of use those two terms in a synonymous way. If we're mentoring someone, we're actually coaching them. But I like to give people examples of a baseball team. I have a nephew that was head coach for a baseball team in one of the major universities in the Big Ten a few years ago. And he was the head coach. But before he was head coach, he was a pitching coach. As the pitching coach, he was actually a mentor because he taught those young fellows exactly how they were to accomplish their part of the overall team effort. Whenever he became the head coach, his job was now to help show each individual how their personal efforts fit into the big picture to make the entire team successful. When we're in the railroad, we often mentor individuals on a personal basis. We go to them, teach them how to switch cars, teach them how to better read a switch list, teach them how to cross over tracks, looking both ways, taking the safest course, all of those things. But then we also have to spend time in coaching them. If you do this, you're a part of a bigger picture. You're part of an overall effort. And in doing those things, the mentoring and the coaching, and making sure that we engage in both of those efforts, even though others might see them as being synonymous, we need to understand that there's a time to talk individually to a person and their personal capabilities, and a time to talk to individuals about their overall involvement as a part of the team. We need to be able to go to individuals and help develop them personally for the overall good of the railroad. And building that trust will always come as a result of and as a part of doing these things. As managers, whenever you go out into the field, and you need to really be sure that you have opportunities to do that, spend some time with your employees. Make sure that they understand that at any given time, you might show up. Whenever you show up, generally speaking, it's always a good thing to let them know that you're there at some point and to talk to them, visit with them, take those opportunities, talk to them about safety-related things. Whenever you go out to do efficiency testing, for example, you should always have prepared in the back of your mind something to talk to them about. Perhaps it's a rule. Perhaps it's an example of something that's happened on another railroad or something that recently happened on your railroad. Whenever you go and spend opportunities that you can develop to demonstrate that through experience and knowledge, you know how rules are supposed to be applied, you know how to apply them, and you personally know the job that they're doing. They'll develop that trust in listening to you and observing the things that you encourage them to do. The operational testing, great opportunity to encourage people in a positive manner and in order to give them constructive guidance whenever they're lacking in something. We talk about discipline. Discipline for years has come to be a dirty word in the industry. But discipline, if you really look at the word and what it's truly intended to be, is not a matter of punishing someone, but an opportunity to further develop someone's ability, raise them up to a level of performance that is greater than the level of performance they had before the disciplinary process taking place. If we can do that, we go a long ways building people's trust. And the thought of a discipline policy being put in place, the thought of someone being disciplined no longer leaves a bad taste in people's mouth if they understand that the management of the railroad as a whole, intends not to get rid of people, but to help people develop in a personal way so that we can all work together for the good of the railroad. Providing opportunities for good, open, two-way communication is part not only constructive guidance in operational testing, but also in any disciplinary processes we have. Remember that old saying that it takes one attaboy. It just takes one, oh my goodness, to wipe out a whole bucket full of attaboys. You need to really take the opportunities to give your employees praise for work efforts well done, as well as calling them down and instructing them to how to better opportunities to develop themselves to a higher level of performance. Slide number 9. When we talk about the empowerment of individuals on the railroad, at the Shortline Institute, a couple of 3 years ago, we really had some various opinions as to what empowerment really is. We did a research project, basically, looked at what all different sorts of people in different industries consider to be empowerment. And we finally concluded that true empowerment is ensuring that employees have the skills, the knowledge, resources, and the authority to make safe choices within an acceptable range of options. Now, an acceptable range of options on a railroad is what will keep us safest while performing the service that our customers desire and always with safety as the highest priority in those things. As long as our individual employees know how to do a job. They have the knowledge of the rules required to perform that. They have all of the resources they need in order to get the work done. And they have the authority to make choices that are safe in order to further safety and performance without any fear of retribution. Then there will be a successful trust building opportunity and success on the part of the railroad. It's very crucial to sustain a strong safety culture on your property that you have a good understanding of and actionable empowerment on the part of all of your employees. It encourages that everyone should be able to exercise safe behaviors on their own without having to stop and go to a supervisor and say, is it okay if I do this? Normally we would do that, but today something has changed a little bit and we need to make an adjustment in order to more safely perform this job. Well, do your employees have the authority based on good information, good knowledge, good resources? Do they have the authority to make the choice and then after the work is done, explain what they've done and be supported in the choices that they make? Or do they have to stop and ask a supervisor, is it okay if I do this? All too often we find people that think that they're empowered, but the strength of their empowerment only goes to stopping until someone else tells them how to perform more safely. Strong empowerment encourages safe behaviors, but it also ensures that an employee's supervisor will support them. And that's where your efforts come in, making sure your people understand that basically you have their back, that they can trust you to stand beside them. If they make a bad choice, yes, they can take the responsibility and be held accountable for it, but you don't necessarily have to make them feel like they've been punished because they made a wrong decision and they could have made a better decision. Sometimes learn well through mistakes, as long as those mistakes don't cost the company a great deal of money and certainly are not done at the cost of safety. It's okay. You made mistakes. People are going to make some mistakes. What we need to do is ensure that through skills, knowledge, and resources, we're able to make safer choices without bad consequences. And we can do those things, and all the while, we'll be building confidence in the company as a whole. And keep in mind here, whenever we're talking about the supervisors on the railroad, we do not encourage any kinds of programs or activities that would build only trust in an individual, because that individual might not be there tomorrow. And then where did the trust go? What we're looking for is organizational trust that is held up by all of the individuals that oversee the work, by the people who do the work, so that if one individual has to drop out of that picture, the overall trustworthiness of the company and the mutual trust between management and employees goes unaffected, continues. Employees feeling strongly supported will regularly and increasingly make good decisions regarding safety. An example of what we've been talking about, let's take for example, a train crew every day gets a switch list to go out and do their work. They normally perform their task in a certain order each day. And they approach their work today. They see that there is some options that they might have because of some circumstance that has come up today. And their options would include getting it done faster, but less safely. Although, probably I can do this without any bad repercussion, but it'll be faster. Or I can take option number 2 which will increase the probability of safety being maintained, but it'll take a few minutes longer. Will that employee have the security and the confidence to take the safer option rather than the faster option? And is his supervisor going to stand behind him and say, you made a good choice? I commend you for making that choice. And as supervisors, we need to take opportunities to commend individuals for making good, safe choices, even at the expense of a few minutes of time. It goes a long ways for employees to know that their supervisors will support them, and they will then continue on with the work of the day in a very successful, safe, and productive manner. Sam?
So with that, we'll move into with Michelle here on anybody have any questions? So Michelle?
Yeah, okay. So sorry, anybody that had my volume went out there for a second. So I'll just go over just a few other features in case you missed it in the beginning. If you do have any questions for our experts here today, you can go over into the right-hand side into the questions box. And if you hit the down arrow, you will be able to type in your questions. And as they come up, we'll be able to read them live here. So feel free, take a few minutes and familiarize yourself with that spot. And send us some questions if you want to talk to our experts. If not, you want to think on it a little bit, sit and digest. You can always reach out to JR or Sam or myself, and we'll be able to answer your questions more privately as well. But for right now, if you want to ask us some questions, feel free to do so. So I'll give you a few minutes to type in, and we'll just read them as they come in. So one of the questions I do have here, guys, is regarding safety committees. In what way can we use our safety committee to build trust, and how?
Well, whenever you talk about a safety committee, some railroads feel like a safety committee should be made up of managers, and they look at particular things going on within the railroad and make choices to how it's going to be done. They present those things to the employees for them to carry out. A good safety committee being used by the railroad to involve, and this kind of goes back to this we talked about with inclusion, make employees feel that they're a part of the choice-making process in the railroad. Short lines have a unique opportunity in the way they're put together for a safety committee to review any kind of safety concerns that have been brought up. And if those reviews are done by the employees with management, and if the opportunities for resolution made by the employee with the cooperation of management, this business of building trust it goes into the stratosphere. People really feel that they're a part of something. Feel that they're a part of something. And that can be done perhaps through a good, strong safety as well as any other way in the railroad.
Okay, thank
Thoughts?
you. Sam, do you have any additional?
No, just that, we've, as JR said, the inclusion portion of this, not just including your employees and safety committees, which is a whole separate conversation, but it's very important. But I think the key aspect here is if you have a safety committee that's made up of the employees across all the crafts, that's your go-to for creating a lot of the other policies or programs or activities that we discussed earlier. You now have a resource sitting there ready to do a lot of this work for you.
Sam. Okay, so we have one other question. It is referring back to your example, Sam, of how you approached your manager. So how can an employee suggest or approach management regarding building trust on their property?
So the employee to approach the management, there's a lot of different ways to go about that, and it depends a lot on your management staff. If an employee is trying to approach a manager to get them involved and engaged in building trust, I think the first probably opportunity that I would throw out there would be have a safety culture assessment done. If we come out and do a safety culture assessment, that's one of the many things that we look at on a property is that level of trust. And we always provide, if we feel that it can be built upon, we provide opportunities to do that. But that's a tough conversation to have with a manager, but it's not an impossible one. I think if it were me, I would want to have a conversation with my manager about some of the key components of building trust. That would be improving the communication or developing the programs and the processes that we've discussed. Try to kind of ease into that conversation with him, not necessarily about just building the trust, but about identifying and working on the key components of building that trust individually.
Sure, and also, Sam, I just wanted to kind of tag on that as well. Even coming with some suggestions as well might be a great opportunity to open up that conversation as well.
Absolutely. I know as a railroad manager, my favorite employees were always the one that came to me with solutions more often than problems. Everybody can come to you with a problem, but if you can approach a manager with a solution, that's always a big help.
All right, we have one last question, and then we'll wrap up here for today. So our last question that we have is there any progress, is there any information that you can share with us about Assessment 2.0?
Well, we're currently in the development phase of that. We're still working with our partners with Volpe National Transportation to develop that. We've done some testing with the 2.0 surveys. We've made some adjustments there, and we're anticipating probably being ready to start doing those the first part of the second quarter of 2019. So we're just a matter of a few months away from hopefully starting to roll with that.
Great. Thank you so much, Sam and JR. And I want to thank all of our participants today for joining us for this last webinar of 2018. And from all of us from the Shortline Safety Institute, we wish you a safe and happy year and next year and future. And if you have any questions at all, if you have any suggestions for us, if you need any resources, we are here for you. So please feel free to reach out to us at any time that you need at the contacts listed on the screen above. And again, Happy New Year, and thank you for your continual support.